Okay, hi. So welcome back to the OSDC course, the open source developer course especially for Perl developers. Welcome back, Darren and Steve, and hopefully other people will join. There's at least one new person who registered to the course since last week. We are going to start with, first of all, if you don't have any questions regarding the material so far, going forward.
No, as long as we did the homework correctly.
Well, okay, so I think you hardly saw you blogging, so please do write a lot more. And you sent in the pull request, so that was fine. We have I'm showing you actually now. Let me show this now. So we have not this one. You have another page. Okay, so this is the page which is basically generated from the content the pull request that you sent and I accepted, and then it automatically creates this page. And from the articles we have the list. Okay, for those people who actually push the articles. So so if I go to this place, I can get to the GitHub page or GitHub page, and as far as I know, there's no pull request. So that's actually part of sort of the homework after you write some blog post, then to include it into into our JSON file. So your private participants, I think you had one, right? Yeah. So add the URL, and so because in the previous course I was running, I allowed for various blogging platforms, but I only have integration so far with Dev.to. So with Dev.to, if you put in a URL, the integration automatically fetches the date and the title. With the others, it doesn't do yet or at all. So that's why here you have a it's a whatever it is. It's a object, right? In Perl its way, that would be a hash. In Python, that would be called a dictionary. I think here it's because it's JavaScript is sort of JSON. It's an object. So that's why we have it this way. If I go to this other course, if you go there and click on their GitHub page, then you will see that at least for some of the people, I think I created one. So for the articles that are not from there, I also need to add the publish at and the title, because I don't, at least the code doesn't fetch these information yet. Okay, so but please do add your URL to your post, so it will be integrated into the website, because it's a nice thing that afterwards to show what's going on in the course. So what I wanted to show you now, that's basically about the sort of the homework that's going forward also. So when you blog, so we could integrate an RSS feed reader or something like this, but I didn't want to do that, at least not at this point. I think it's more interesting just to send in the pull request when you are done and include those articles.
So I've got a question.
Yes, sure.
So I've added a post, but not put it into the my repository yet.
Fine, yeah.
So you've accepted my pull request in the meantime. So if I add the post, is that a new pull request?
That should be a new pull request. So you should start from.
Okay.
So actually, I think I showed something last week. I showed a process of how you can do this, but since then, I'm working with some people who are less technical, used to stuff, and this forced me basically to find a much easier way. So actually, there's a much easier way to do it. And we can take a look at it now. So if I go, where is it? If I go to our project, and let's say I go to, and right now, as you can see here, I'm logged in as CM demo. So it's not my, not the user that can that has access to this repo, writing access. And let's say I go to, I remove from the participants, I remove the CM demo that I added last week because it just was there for an example. But let's say I'm going to edit now the file which is here, okay? At the end, I can edit every file. So I don't need to actually fork it. And even if I have a fork already repo, I can still come to this file and click on edit, and it will automatically create a branch in my fork. So let's say, do I have a fork here? Yes, I have a fork already of this, okay? So, but I don't go to that fork now. I just go back to the original one, and I say, okay, let's edit this one. And then it says you're making changes to the project. Okay, we're reading much better in English than I do. And it's going to create a fork here. Okay, in my already, sorry, it will create a fork it will create a branch in my fork. Okay, so because I already have a forked version of this, and I don't need to go to the fork and start from there. I can go to the original repository and start from there. Okay, which probably easier because or better, because then you don't need all this synchronization. You don't have to, because you're looking at the most recent version after I merged the whatever pull requests people send me. And now I can make the changes here. Let's say, I don't know what shall I do? I just add an empty row here, okay? Because I don't really have anything to add here. And then I can propose a change immediately. And now it automatically created a branch in my clone, in my forked repository. And I'm sending the pull request to the main branch of the original repository. So I didn't have to do all the, when I showed you last week, it was like, okay, do the synchronization, then create a branch, then work on that branch. At the end, GitHub does the whole thing on its own. Okay.
It's good to see the options of the different ways you can do it though. So for me, I preferred that because you get to see whether you want to synchronize or carry on your own forked version, or whether you want, it gives you the options. And I think that was powerful to see.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe for you it's better the other way, but definitely those other people who are basically just end users of computers, so they don't have, and they are, so for them it's much easier, I think, that they don't have to go all these other steps. Even this way, it's like 8 steps to do, because now they still have to create so they clicked on the one button, then they still have to click another button, still a third button. Okay, so it's still a lot of buttons to click and maybe forms to fill or not. If you don't, I mean, you can accept the defaults, but it still has steps. And so now I send this pull request with basically that additional empty row. Okay. More questions? What was it? It's actually a good point. I had this opportunity to show this. Okay, so and of course, if there's a pull request which I already accepted, that don't make further changes to that pull to that branch. So now if I go back and I would like to make more changes to this branch, then I would go back to the branch. So I would go back to my fork. There I would go back to this. Oh, it doesn't show this branch now. Okay. Okay, so it's not, it's in that way, in that case it's not that good. Okay, but for a single change, that can be useful. Okay, I guess when let's see, so we can sync here. What if I update branch? No. View all branches. Maybe it's there. Yeah, okay, it's here. Sorry. So it was there. It was just not in that list. Okay, so I can go to this I can find this branch and I go to this file and make further changes. Okay, so that's that in case the pull request hasn't been integrated yet. And I would like, and there is some back and forth that this pull request is not like to one of you. I think I commented on one of the pull requests that okay, you can change it differently, do it differently. Okay, I don't know whose pull request was. Okay, so in that case, you can go on and then make further changes to this file, other files, and so on. Or if this is a totally different change, okay, because it's a totally unrelated change, okay, then you create a new branch and you do that there, okay, because they are unrelated. Okay, if any more questions, then go ahead. If not, then I'll show you this other course that I'm like 4 weeks into, which I'm training. The presentation is in Hebrew, so we can't really overlap. But they already have these extra things. So these are what we call GitHub Pages. Any of you have GitHub page or GitLab page or?
I don't know about pages. I've got lots of projects or repositories, okay. Yeah, but I don't know what a page concept means in GitHub.
Okay, so a GitHub page, but it also exists on GitLab, actually. It's basically a website for you, okay, that you can write very easy, you can create very easily in Markdown, or you can make it nicer with all kind of other features, okay? So here are a couple of them already created and submitted their page. So let's say this person, Shuri Avram. So she has this website, okay? It's not very fancy, but it's a website, okay? And if you look at the URL, I don't know if you can see it because that part is really small. The URL is basically her GitHub username .github.io. That's the URL, okay? And if I go back and I pick someone else, okay, that's a simpler one. It's a default thing, okay? So thank you. So this is another page. Okay, this is just basically a website that you can create rather easily. And if you go back there, if you go for mine, okay, wait a second, let me show you this one. So another person has, and this here too, you can see username .github.io. So this is the GitHub username. Now, in my case, if you click on mine, then you will see that the URL is github.subgud.com. So it's not in the github.io domain. If you have a domain name, then you can actually map any subdomain to this place. And then your subdomain will be the address of this website. Okay, so you don't, and I picked GitHub as my subdomain because I also have gitlab.subgud.com, I think, which is pointing to a demo page of mine on GitLab. So it's you can put anything here. Actually, if you look at our website, okay, the OSDC codemaven.com, so the main page of the website, this is also hosted on GitHub Pages, and you can also see that the layer, the design is the same because I'm just using the default design. I haven't invested any energy in creating some one of the default designs I use. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to do now is create for you, or I show you how to create such a page because it's quite easy to do so, and it's a very nice thing to be able to create these pages. Okay, so here, okay, this is the URL that we are going to have, because you remember my user here is cm-demo. So once we have the website, it will be here. And here I'm just showing you that, like any good magician, I'm showing that it doesn't exist before I start doing it. Okay, and then I go to somewhere where I can have a GitHub. Okay, so this is my URL in the GitHub. In GitHub, my user cm-demo, and I'm creating a new repository. And I'm going to call it cm-demo.github.io. Okay, so this must be the name of your repository, your username. So it must be owned by you, of course. Your GitHub username .github.io. That's the requirement. I think it can also be private, but I'm going to create it public now. And I can already add the README file just for fun. Okay, and I create the repository. So now basically this automatically is going to be generated as a GitHub page. But we can, and it will take a couple of seconds, I think, till it creates. But in the meantime, I would like to show this setting. So in the settings, there is an entry called pages. And here we can have some configuration for this GitHub pages. Okay, so we can ask, there are two ways of generating GitHub pages. One of them is from a branch. Okay, so basically just files that we already have in the Git repository. So I will put either HTML files or Markdown files in the Git repository, and then it will be from that the pages will be the site will be generated. Or I can select the other one, the GitHub action, which is GitHub Actions, which is basically allows me to run any program and using that program to generate the website. So I don't know if you're familiar with various static site generators. Do you know any of them? That basically generate from text pages, websites.
I don't use them myself, no.
No, okay. So there are, like, I looked at some page, I'll find that web page soon, where there is a list of like 400 of these programs, basically, that take a bunch of, let's say, Markdown files and convert them into HTML files and save them in some place, and then you have a static website. Okay, and the one that GitHub is using is called Jekyll. Okay, it's written in Ruby. So let's see if it worked. Okay, so I go back to this URL, I reload it, and here you are. Okay, this is the content of the README file that was automatically added when I asked it to be added. Okay, so if I go back to my source code here, you will see that there is this README file, and this was the exact content of it. And well, this is not very interesting. We'll now get to create a more interesting content, okay? But before we do, what you can see is that it took the README file and from that created the repository. There is some hierarchy of what files it will be using. If you have an index.md, then it will prefer to the README. But if you don't have an index.md, then it will use the README to generate the main page of the file of the site. If I go back to the settings, then I can also, and pages, and we are still in this deploy from branch mode. We can actually ask it from which branch to generate it, but basically it only allows us the main branch or not to do at all. So if I don't want to generate a website, then I could turn it off. And I can ask it to generate it from the root repository or from the docs repository. Now, before I actually show it to you, let me go there to GitHub subgov/Perl weekly. I think that's the repository. Okay, so this is basically the source code of the Perl weekly. Each edition has a JSON file. Okay, each edition of the Perl weekly has a JSON file with all the content. Then there is some Perl script here in lib, in bin and lib. There are some Perl code that runs, and from that generates HTML pages in the docs directory, docs folder. Okay, and then if I can't show the configuration here, so let me switch to the other browser. I need this one. Okay, in this browser, I am the owner, so I can access the settings. You see, let me just show it again. So here I am CM demo, who has no access to this repository per weekly, just read access. And here in this browser, I am myself, and here I have the settings because I am the owner of this repo. And if I go here to the pages, you will see that in this one, I am serving in from the docs folder. So it's serving any file that can be found in the docs folder. And in the case of the Perl weekly, I have a script that generates it. Now it's actually an old school system, because when I created the Perl weekly and this version, GitHub didn't have this other system of GitHub Actions yet. So it was only that whatever is in the docs directory, show it. But I wanted to have a preprocessor to generate the website from the JSON files. So for me, for Perl weekly, what we have is we have some data, generate HTML files using offline basically on my computer, and it could get a bit better. Generating these files, committing them to this GitHub repository again into docs directory, and then just pushing it out. And then from that, the website is just shown within a few minutes, seconds usually. Okay, so let me go back to where we were, to our own configuration. So let me change here from root to docs and save it. And now, we don't, in this repository, in the CM demo repository, we don't have a folder called docs. So if I come back here, I guess, I don't know what exactly will happen. Probably it will go back to 404 not found, because there's no docs directory. I don't know what will happen, or there can be an error. Doesn't really matter. We'll wait and see it. In the meantime, let's go forward and start working on this page, but not on the UI. So I can come here, and just as earlier, we can start creating here files. Now you don't need to send any pull request, because now you own this repository, right? If you create, so if this CM demo, it doesn't need to do anything. I can create now a folder and a file. So let's start with that. Okay, here. So I can create a file, create a new file, and I would like it to be in the docs directory, and I would like it to be called index.md. And here I just say, hello world. And I put a hash mark in front of it, and then I don't need to write course. The C is already course. Okay, so this is the file. I haven't saved it yet because I'm still waiting to, maybe I'll be able to show what happens here. Well, apparently it doesn't remove it now, but doesn't really matter. So I'm going to commit the file, and I don't need to work in any branches because it's my own repository. I'm just working on the UI, and in a second we'll switch to the command line. Okay, so now I created a subfolder called docs, and in there an index.md. And let me just check again the settings, whether it took place or I missed it. So it says branch, and from the docs folder, main branch, docs folder. So everything should be fine. It even shows me the URL. Okay. There is a checkbox that I don't know why it's not. It used to be an unchecked checkbox. I don't know why it's now checked, whether it's something I did earlier or it's now the default that everything is HTTPS, but doesn't matter. Reloading. Yes. Okay. So now we have this hello world. Welcome to the OSDC. Everything is fine. That's generated from my index.md. Now I can start improving it. Okay. And I can start adding more content. just in Markdown, I can create more files and so on. But this one I won't do on the UI. Any questions so far, actually?
Oh, I was kind of following along. I've kind of done a little bit of mine, but I don't get the pages. There's no content in my pages tab.
Okay.
I get the website, so I've now got a little github.io site with my name, user ID on the front of it. But on my pages tab, there's nothing. It just says there are no verified domains, so I don't get the build and deployment actions.
Sorry, here. If shall we look at yours?
Yeah, kind of.
Look, if you don't mind, that is going to be also in the video. It's okay.
Yeah, I'll have to move it out to a different browser. One sec.
Okay.
Okay, so if I does it share the whole screen or does it just share a tab?
You have to select that. Well,
Yeah.
if you share the whole browser, I think it won't be able to do a single tab. I think either either a page.
I'm going to go old school and change my screen resolution and then make my page full screen. That will do it. All right, and then share screen. Oh, then it asks me. You're right. So there we go. Desktop one is fine. Yeah, share. Right. So I've come into my personal page and come into the pages tab, and I've got the no verified domains.
Wait a second. No. You are in your. I think that's your personal whole configuration.
Okay.
That's not your repositories.
Ah, so it's the settings of the repo I need to be. Oh, that's good. So back into the repo then. So the repo I was interested in was this one.
Okay. And
So I'm looking for that settings button.
Yeah. It's their repo. Yeah.
That's good. I won't be the only person to fall down that trap. And then pages in there. And see, it's all there now.
Yeah, and there you can say that whatever. If you would like to switch from the root folder to docs, so it's useful to be in the docs. So the idea here originally was that you have some repo with some program in it, but you also would like to have it that it will have a website. So he said, okay, they had like two ways to do this. One of them was, okay, create a branch, and whatever is on that branch will be in the website. So that was one mode, but it's sort of, I'm not sure if it was a really good idea, because then you have a branch only for website. So the other idea was that, okay, you pick a folder, which they decided to be the docs folder, and then everything in there is going to be the website. So none of your code is going to be part of the website, which is usually what you want. Mm-hmm. And so this was sort of the two. These are what you can see when you see the main and the root. And when you look at the source, this is a relatively new addition. I think 1 or 2 years old. That you can start that instead of using their own generator, which is, as I said, is Jekyll, you can use any program you would like. Because they will run whatever program you run, and then that program will just generate the HTML files. Yeah. Okay? So okay. Steve, did you also follow? Did you also want to share? Show? No. We can't hear you. But okay.
Yep. No, I wasn't following. I mean, I was watching you.
Okay, no problem. Actually, I wanted to say this, that at one point we might want to switch, and we can discuss it separately, into a more of this pair programming mode, where I tell one of you what to do, and then we are looking at your screen, and then you are doing it. Okay, this is. I think it can be a very useful mode of teaching. I mean, I did it in some cases. Okay. And then we can switch to the other person and so on. So we can discuss it later on. So anyway, what we have now is this page, and we can switch to working on the command line. I mean, we could continue on the UI, Okay, but we also would like to learn how to use the command line and do that. So for that, we need to clone this repository. Okay, so I went back to the code part, the big green button code, and then I have a couple of options here. I already have Git command line, so I don't really, okay. I assume that you already have Git on your computer and probably command line. I'm teaching the command line usage of Git instead of using some UI or Visual Studio Code plugins or whatever, because I believe that people, first of all, are capable of doing this. Some people think that they are not, but I definitely think that it's not that difficult. And I think it's much better to learn the basics on the command line. And then if someone wants to switch some of these GUIs, then fine, but you already understand how the things actually work. Because the GUIs tend to hide, let's say they're hiding the whole staging thing they're trying to hide. And sometimes they're doing these magic things, which will cause people then to not understand what's going on. So anyway, whoa, what happened? I have here two ways. Either I use HTTPS, for which I think I don't need any authentication to clone, and the SSH, for which I might need authentication even for cloning. That I'm not really sure, but definitely for pushing, if I use HTTPS, then I will have to provide my username and password every time. Or there is some password management, but I've never used it. I really prefer to use SSH keys. So I copy this one, I go to the command line, if I find it, okay. So this folder, and I type in git clone, let's enlarge it, and this URL, okay. Now, I'm wondering really what will happen, because my SSH key is not added there, but it works, it seems, okay. So it cloned it, and because the repository was called cm demo something, so this is exactly what the local folder that I got. Okay, and here I have the content. So now I can go into docs index and new line, and I can add any markdown here. Okay, and I can add a link here. Okay, so let's create a link, and if I remembered the URL, or so instead of typing in, I just copy paste the URL. Okay. So far is good. So git clone basically copied everything that was in my repository locally, all the history. So actually I can git log, see the history, those two commits. The first that was created when the repository was created and the README file was added, and the second when I added the index file in the MD, in the docs folder. Okay, so this is, so everything is here. Now I made some changes here. If I run git status, I can see that this file is modified. Okay, so I have a local change here. Now I can I need first to mark it as being in the staging area, which I do with git add, and well, I can do it in docs and index.md, so the file name. Okay, I could provide several files, and now if I run git status, then it says it's to be committed. Okay, it's what we call the staging area. The idea here is that you might work, so you might start working on something, and then you notice a typo, and then you fix the typo, and then you notice something else, and you fix that, and you have now a lot of changes in your working directory which are unrelated. And the recommendation is that you commit each of these changes separately. So maybe you have a typo check, that would be a separate commit. Because if you commit together a change in a typo and some implementation, then half a year from now, when you're looking back and you're seeing that change, you and everyone else is going to wonder, what is the connection? And you will waste a lot of time on it, or you might waste a lot of time on it. Now, maybe not with typo, but with a little bit you do you find a function, you do work some on the function, but at the meantime you notice a variable name which is bad, and you change it to a more meaningful name. Suddenly it's okay. What is the connection between the two changes? Nothing really. Okay, so it's much better to commit them separately. So the staging area allows me to prepare and say, okay, these are the changes that I would like to commit now, and then do one commit for those changes, and the rest are left in the working directory. And it's not only that you can say that, okay, I commit this file and that file, but not the other three. You can even, within a file, you can say that at the line 3 and 4, there was some change. This one I would like to add to the Git, to the staging area, because I would like to commit it. But on line 15 and 16, there was some unrelated change. So that is not going to be in the staging area. You can even do that. Okay. So you don't, and then you have one change, which is, well, maybe several files, but they are related. So maybe you added a parameter to a function, and in some other file you're using that function. So this is a related change. So you would like to commit them together. But something that's unrelated, you would like to commit separately, and that's the whole idea of the staging area. So now it's in the staging area, and I can git commit. And at this point, I have a choice. I need to write some message here. So either I say -m and explain what I did, added some lines, okay? Or if I just type in git commit enter, then it will open my default editor, which is usually Vim. I mean, I prefer to use Vim, but you can configure it to be any editor you like. Okay, if you prefer Emacs, then use Emacs. If you are using Windows and you prefer Notepad, then definitely configure it so it won't open you Vim, because then you don't know how to get out of it. Okay, so git commit, and then it's committed. So now if I go to git log, okay, you can see that I have now 3 commit messages here. Where is my mouse? I lost my mouse. It's, oh, back. Okay, the 2 old ones, this and this, and the new one that I just committed. So this is the SHA, or the hash, basically, the SHA1 identifier of the commit. Okay, and what you can also see here is that the head, so the top of my where I am, is pointing to a branch called main. Okay, so this is the commit. This is the main branch. It's made progress, but the origin main, so the remote repository, okay, which is still in GitHub, is pointing still to the previous commit. So the change was made locally here. GitHub is not reflected yet. Okay, now if I would like to make these changes to appear on GitHub, I type in, I mean, I can show this, maybe I should show this, okay? So if I come here and I look at the commits, it still shows only 2 commits, okay? But if I git push it, then, well, I don't have permission, okay? So now we get to the point of giving access rights. For this, as I said, I prefer to use private key, public key pairs. So I need to generate, if you don't have one, you need to generate a private key, public key pair. SSH, as it's done with SSH Agent. By the way, any of you using Windows? Not you, not Darren. I see one of you, so no, okay. So I don't need to show that, okay. But in Windows, so anyway, let me show this one. Just so for Windows, git scm.com. I don't know. Okay, so for Windows, you would download this. That you would get a bash, basically a bash shell for Windows, where you have all the bash commands, and you have this command as well. So this is what I do when I use Windows. Okay. Anyway, SSH Agent if I press enter, it will offer me to create the file in this location. Okay. And I would just press enter, enter, enter all the time, and it will generate a private key, public key pair. I don't do this because I don't want to ruin my own already existing private key, public key. So they are here. SSH ID RSA. This is my private key. I won't show it. And this is my public key. And the public key I can show you. Okay. So this is the public key. I can actually distribute it. Okay, so what I need to do now is take the public key, copy it, and go to my account. Okay, now actually, if it's in my own account, in my own, the user subgab already has this. Now I'm using this other user where I don't have it added. So now I go to this settings. Now this is the settings of the whole user, not per the project. Okay, that's the settings of the user. Actually, maybe I could also do it per project. I'm not sure, but I don't do it. I use it per user. And here I have the SSH and GPG keys. And actually, I have already one because I was demoing this on a Windows machine and I generated it there. Now I add the new one, new SSH key. I paste here the key and give here a name just so I will recognize it. So this is the regular SSH key of Gabor on. Okay, whatever. Okay, just some explanation. So later on you will know what key belongs to what. Oh, and I need to give my password here, and I don't know my password. So let me try to find out my password. I won't show you my password. Ooh. Oh. Okay, 1 second. Okay, what can I do now? I'm doing it off screen because I don't want to show it to you, but I just made some changes to my whole system, so the location of files are different, which is wasn't a good idea to do. But I'm going to fix it very quickly. Okay. So hopefully I have the password here. And I keep forgetting that it remembers my password. So I didn't have all this, didn't need to do all this thing. Anyway, so I configured. Oh. Okay. Let's try something else. So, okay, so what happened now is that GitHub recognized that the same key is already used by some other user, which is my real self. And it doesn't let me do this, apparently. So what I'm going to do in order to do this demo is I'm going to make some changes here. Okay. I'm really doing ID, RSA, real, Gabor. Okay, so I removed them. Now I can demo also the SSH agent. Okay, so I'm going to, so I just pressed enter everywhere. And then I get the new one that was just created. And I add this here. And hopefully this one works. Okay, so now I could add And I can now go back and git push. Okay, and now it's done. And so if I go back to this one, now I already have the 3 commits. Okay, and within a few seconds or a minute, okay, so it takes some time till this is refreshed. Questions?
Yeah, quickly. The key you've just generated, that was a useful thing for me, because I've been using the what they're called personal access tokens. I've been generating one of those each time, and they only last a month. And every single time I'm committing to doing a push from the command line, I have to go and get it from my password manager and then generate a new one and messing about. But presumably those key pairs don't expire.
No, these ones, no.
Right. So that's something I'm going to do immediately.
Okay, so already something useful.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so I've just refreshed it, and you can see here's the link and the new line. So it takes a couple of seconds or a minute or whatever. It also, I guess, depends on the load of GitHub at the time. Okay, because at the end they run this Jekyll program, and it will generate a website from here. And just to be clear, so if you look at this view page source, it's HTML here. So it generated some HTML. It's very plain, nothing fancy here, but it's actually HTML. And we can actually, let me close this. We can actually go back to the command line, and now I'll have to cheat because I never remember how it's done. So where is it? It's in Git work subgov.github. Oh, this is here. Okay, so this is the source code of my own personal website. One of them, the one that you saw, that it's called github.subdoc.com. And this is what I wanted to show you, that there is a YAML file with some configuration, and the greenish bluish theme that you saw on several of my sites is called this Jekyll theme Cayman or Cayman or whatever it is called. So there are a couple of these themes that you can pick. It needs to be a Jekyll and then supported by GitHub. Okay, and I don't know, you can search for them where they are, but I can just copy this file. And if I'm not mistaken, I need to put it into the docs directory here, because I'm serving from the docs. In the other repository where I'm copying from, I'm serving from the root directory. But because here I'm serving from the docs directory, I have to copy it here. So I'm copying into the docs directory. And so now I have this config file, and let's call it demo. Okay. And now I add this file. Okay, so I know Git status. Okay, so I have the new file here. Okay, so it's different. Okay, let me do this as well. Index, another line, just to have some change. So now you can see there are 2 files. One of them changed, this modified. So this is a file that Git already knows about it. It has some history, but it was changed since the last commit. And there is a file which is untrugged. So GitHub says, oh, I have no idea what it is. I don't care. Okay. For either of them, in order to be, for this to be updated and committed, I need to first git add. And the same I have to do with the untrugged file. So I can say git add docs index, and I can say docs config on the same line. I could also say just git add docs, and it would do everything with all the files in that folder. I can even say git add dot, which would just do everything with all the files in the local directory. Of course, you have to be careful, because if there are files that you don't want to add, okay, let me, oh, okay, good. So git status, now you can see that in the staging area, sort of, there are two files. One of them is a new file, and the one of them is modified. And now I can just go ahead and git commit. But what if I say, oh no, and this is exactly what I said a second ago, I don't want to do this. I want to show something else, or I want to do something else. Let me remove from the staging area these files. So let me remove the mark that they are staged. And I can do this by saying, actually, it also says here. I have a different way, so I usually do it in a different way, but you can say it git staged, and I think you can say docs, and then here I think you have to say them one by one, but now you removed that mark that they are in the staging area. So maybe you said, okay, well, let's prepare a commit, and then you change your mind, and so you would like to remove that mark. And the reason I wanted to do this is because of this. Let's try this one, docs index.md. So normally the way I work is that in Vim, I open many files, and instead of quitting Vim and doing something, I click on Ctrl-Z, put it in background, okay? And then I can go with foreground and get back to the same page. Well, it's literally page now, but if there are several files, so I might open another file, this docs config, and then I have both of them open. So I definitely don't want to close Git. So I press Ctrl-Z to go to the background. Now, this is nothing to do with Git, but Git status, and it's still not doing what I wanted to do. Why is not showing me? Why is there no swap file now? Why is there no swap file when you need them? Okay, so Git would, sorry, Vim would normally create, maybe because I configured it to be some other place. Anyway, Vim would normally create a swap file when it's editing, but maybe I configured it to not be local. But let's say you have a file here. Okay, so I also have an image file here. Okay, that I don't want to add. Okay, maybe this is some if you're writing Perl and you just run Perl makefile, then it will generate a bunch of files which you don't want to add to the Git repository. So how can, but if you type in git add now and with dot, then it will add everything. So how can you tell it to avoid adding files that you don't want them to be added? For that, there is a file called, or there can be a file called gitignore. It doesn't exist. Okay, you have to create it. And then you can add, let's say I put it in .jpg or star.jpg. So you put here either exact names of files or I think just generally wildcards that will match the file. Now, if I save this and I check Git status, well, it doesn't show that file anymore, the some JPEG. It's still here. Okay, so the file is still here, but Git just sort of, well, ignores it, right? So now if I say git add dot, then it won't add that file. Okay. What it does add is the gitignore, which is a good thing, okay? Because you want this gitignore to be part of your Git repository, because some other person will clone this, they will generate that temporary file, and you want to make sure that even them will, just by running your makefile, okay, in case of Perl, or if you're using Python, then there is the PyCache directory, let's say, okay, or whatever generated files, okay. So there are all kinds of files you might be that they are generated. If you're writing some C or some compiled language, then the compiled files are going to be there, okay, or the object files or whatever. So plenty of files that you don't want to be part of your history in Git. So all of them you will add to this gitignore file. Then not the files, you add the names of the files, okay? and you add the gitignore file to your repository. Okay, question?
No, I do use the gitignore file. I tend to use it as you've just given an example for executables, because when I'm doing Perl stuff, I always have to package it up and deliver it as an executable to my customers. And for log directories and input and output directories which may contain sensitive data, I put some sort of filter to say to it, please ignore everything in these folders, so that I can still push my whole repo up there. So I don't know all the details, but I know enough to get round.
Okay, so actually I have a blog post about it, but what I wanted to show you that when you're creating a new repository, one of the things that you can choose is a template, Git template. Okay, so let's say we create a filter for Perl. They still have Perl 6 there. And then it will create a gitignore file, which has all kinds of these generic stuff, like the swap file of Vim, and but also Perl specific entries that you would normally want to ignore in a Perl program, in a Perl project. Okay, like the blib directory. Okay, that's something that's always generated and so that's it. So you can create a project by using by asking it also to create this gitignore file for you. Okay. Any more questions here? I have no idea. So here, just let me show you. So I didn't add the -m, so it opened the Vim, and and I save it. So I write it out and quit the Vim, and this is done. This is the commit is done, and then I can go ahead and git push, and it pushed it out. And now I can come here. I can refresh it. You can see it, and within a couple of seconds it will show up here, and then we are going to have a break once it's done. Okay. Any questions in the meantime? Comments?
No.
What else? I think I showed quite a few things now on the command line. Forget it. Okay. Well, after we come back from the break, hopefully it will be updated already. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, it is. Okay. So you can see this is what you get just by adding this configuration file, and then you can pick whatever. There are a couple of these things. Okay. So thank you for now. If you're watching the video, then please like the video and follow the channel and whatever, and see you in the 10 minutes, okay? The next part of the session. Bye.